321. Side effects of buff. So Vizette was playing a grand game. Even I was kept in the dark. Dumbledore chuckled, a delighted laugh, tears welling in his eyes. The owner of the memory, Dobby, took a shuddering breath and slumped against the study door, looking as if he had been frightened out of his wits. Tears shone in his eyes, too, but these were tears of fear. He was terrified of the possibility of Lord Voldemort's return. The memory shifted. After Lucius left, Dobby crept into the empty study, moving cautiously as if searching for something. After a long while, he found it, a dragonhide notebook in a cabinet, embossed with the name Abraxas Malfoy. Snape watched Dobby pry at the book and remarked coldly, snooping into his master's papers, "In the house of Malfoy, a house elf could be punished to death for that." Dumbledore sighed with feeling. To do as much as he has for Harry, Dobby may be the most remarkable house elf I've ever seen. Snape only sneered. Being feinted by Vizette repeatedly certainly makes him memorable. As Dobby turned the pages of the dragonhide notebook, Dumbledore and Snape read along. Through its contents, they finally understood why Lucius had connected Vizette with Lord Voldemort. Dobby, who had secretly read the same notes, came to the same conclusion and used the notebook as corroboration. Vizette must be the Lord reborn. That fear of Voldemort explained Dobby's terror when he met Vizette. He showed every sign of distress and fainted outright more than once. Snape could understand, to a degree, why Lucius made that link. The Dark Mark had indeed appeared, and Lucius's feelings about the Dark Lord were deeply conflicted. In his youth, he'd followed Abraxas Malfoy's wishes and, like other Death Eaters, had once revered Voldemort. But as the war wore on, Voldemort's true nature became clearer, and Lucius's admiration eroded into fear. When news of the Dark Lord's downfall spread, Lucius was among the first Death Eaters to defect. He denounced Voldemort, revealed other Death Eaters' whereabouts, and managed to avoid trial. As life began to stabilize, however, he grew anxious again. Sleepless and unsettled, he relied on Dreamless Sleep Potion and Wit Sharpening Potion to get by and to preserve the family's influence. When the effects wore off, he even sought Snape's help to wean himself off the Wit Sharpening Potion, but the damage had been done. Side effects were inevitable. Snape described it plainly. Lucius had taken so many potions that his head was full of herbs. When the Dark Mark flared, his anxiety peaked, and the side effects of excessive Wit Sharpening Potion produced an extreme idea. He decided Draco should approach Vizette, feign goodwill, and beg the Dark Lord's forgiveness. Some of Lucius's thinking Snape could follow. Other parts bewildered him. What he found most incomprehensible was that Lucius dared to oppose Dumbledore. Using his position on the school board, he privately schemed to remove Dumbledore from the headmaster's post. He even found fault with a children's story, The Fountain of Fair Fortune, claiming it distorted the relationship between wizards and muggles and sullied the purity of the purebloods. Terrified of Voldemort, yet unafraid to cross the one man Voldemort feared most, and willing to confront him. Considering all of this, Snape could accept that Lucius might well mistake Vizette for Voldemort, but he also found much of Dumbledore's behavior puzzling. The man called the greatest wizard of his age, the one who ended the last war, had written a reply to Lucius explaining his intentions for a fairy tale. Snape thought there were countless ways to handle the matter. Dumbledore had chosen the most cumbersome and least coercive. It was as if some binding obligation forced Dumbledore to respond like that. But what sort of binding could be so powerful? Snape could not tell. The Dark Mark speaks louder than any unsubstantiated rumor, Dumbledore observed with a smile. Besides, there are whispers that Lord Voldemort walks in the dark forests of Albania. His influence lingers, otherwise wizards would not still speak in euphemisms, Snape said. I think Mr. Malfoy has always been very afraid. Perhaps to the point of losing sleep, Dumbledore agreed. Especially now, with the Dark Mark appearing, his fear must be at its peak. Snape frowned. What do you intend to do about Lucius? Dumbledore stroked his beard. Perhaps we can win Mr. Malfoy over. Snape raised an eyebrow. Through Vizette? To use Vizette as a conduit, Dumbledore said softly. For Mr. Malfoy, this would seem like a path toward light, everything arranged as he wishes. Ultimately, for families with enough flexibility, self-interest is the real driving force. All those pureblood sentiments? They're mostly slogans hiding beneath the skin. Snape conceded Dumbledore's point. The moment news of Voldemort's fall spread, Lucius had portrayed himself to the Ministry as someone who'd been imperious, an expedient and flexible move. Lord Voldemort will return, that much is certain, Dumbledore said. Imagine what will happen to Lucius if he rejoins the Death Eaters. While other pureblood families recovered, the Malfoys' wealth grew, Snape noted. Rather than allowing that wealth to become a boon for Voldemort, it could fall to someone else. Severus, you know well what kind of man Lord Voldemort is, Dumbledore said quietly. When he returns, our Mr. Draco Malfoy might suffer undeservedly because of his father's past. Severus Snape pressed his lips together and said nothing. Dumbledore wasn't wrong. If Lord Voldemort returned, he could do terrible things. Snape's silence wasn't just because of his ties to Lucius and Draco. Weakening Voldemort's advantages before a return was another reason he didn't argue. Dumbledore saw the thought in Snape's eyes and continued, leisurely, Severus, you don't really need to say anything. You only need to take Dobby back to the manor. Mr. Malfoy, he'll weigh his options and make the right choice, won't he? Snape stared at the house elf, who kept moving nervously and remained silent. Dumbledore paced the office. In any case, he's already making a choice. Otherwise, he wouldn't have told Mr. Draco Malfoy to make contact, would he? As for me, I'll be the doddering old headmaster. Hogwarts will have its light hidden under a bushel for a while, and our dear Dark Lord Vizette will seize the chance. Dumbledore's smile grew wider. It makes me a bit afraid, actually. One day, our Dark Lord Vizette might ask to speak with me alone, and then, green light. Do you want to die? Snape raised an eyebrow. That will have to wait until after we take Voldemort down. Even if I have to drench you in a potion, I'll keep you alive. Hopefully the potion can be a little sweeter, Dumbledore said, interrupting. Soaking someone in something too bitter would be truly terrible. Snape's only response was a pair of low, skeptical snorts. The memory in the Pensieve shifted again. This time Dobby was in Lucius Malfoy's bedroom. He didn't linger. He took the robes Lucius had worn and turned them inside out, searching every pocket with trembling hands. His face grew more anxious as he muttered, It's gone! It's gone! Master must have sent it away. It will go back to Hogwarts. Harry Potter is in danger. I must do something. I must do something. Dumbledore watched the frantic elf like someone watching an ant on a hot griddle. He's looking for something, he said, perhaps the sort of thing that could summon the basilisk. If it can fit in a pocket and be handed to someone else, then it must be small, Snape said, frowning. A notebook? Dumbledore blinked. Oh, you've seen one before? I don't remember its specific use, just a casual passing of something. Snape frowned harder, trying to pull the details into focus. It seemed connected to a meeting about Harold Mincham. Harold Mincham? Dumbledore's expression sharpened. You mean that retaliatory strike, the one that ruined his standing and led to his resignation as Minister for Magic? It should have been that, Snape nodded. After the meeting, the Dark Lord said that once Mincham was dealt with, Hogwarts would be next. How did Voldemort speak of the notebook? Was he serious about it or casual? Dumbledore pressed. Snape thought for a moment. Quite casual. He told them not to lose it, said it could endanger Hogwarts and undermine your authority if it fell into the wrong hands. Dumbledore nodded, then turned his attention back to Dobby in the memory. The elf had returned the robes and gone to the fireplace. He picked up the poking iron and beat himself, punishing himself for offending his master. With another dizzying turn, Dumbledore and Snape drew out of the Pensieve. Back in the headmaster's office, Fawkes the Phoenix looked older than usual, as if ready to go to Nirvana at any moment. Dumbledore sat, slightly lost in thought. After a while, he said softly, Severus, what happens to Lucius is not my doing, but for children who can still find their way back. Snape cut him off roughly. Are you atoning for the past? Perhaps, Dumbledore admitted. I suppose I'm attempting some small progress. When Voldemort returns, we may fall into familiar chaos. He looked at Snape with quiet intensity. There will always be some Slytherins who will inevitably come into conflict. Severus, you know who I mean. Snape's expression darkened. Now you think you were wrong back then? Dumbledore gave no clear answer. He reached into his robe and took out 2 lemon sherbets. You can go back and think about it, he said, As I said, you only need to take Dobby back to the manor. Snape stared at the hard candy and did not take it. He glanced at Dobby in the corner once more, then left the office without hesitation. Watching the tall figure of Snape go, Dumbledore stroked his beard, peeled the wrapper from a sherbet, and popped it into his mouth. He raised his wand to the pensieve and drew out the silver thread of memory from Dobby. Using emotion as a fulcrum to lever a memory, he murmured, turning the thread over in his mind. An excellent idea. You haven't disappointed me, Vizette, he said to himself. You really can pick up some interesting techniques from Lockhart. If emotion can be a fulcrum, he wondered, could memory itself serve as a fulcrum to alter other memories? Perhaps worth trying. He wiggled the silver thread and focused on the corner of the memory. Meanwhile, in the necessary corridor where the message had been altered, the changed writing had begun to draw the students in. Ravenclaws mainly scrutinized the text, copying lines and comparing them to their recollections to see what had shifted. Hufflepuffs and Gryffindors came more for the spectacle, curious who had tampered with the inscription. Slytherins watched with a different hunger. Theirs was an expectation salted with hope. They wanted proof, a true heir to appear and confirm that the Chamber of Secrets was real. Pansy Parkinson gripped her quill tightly, the altered words still fresh in her mind. She wrote in her diary with more pressure than usual, scrawling, "Riddle, I feel as if Slytherin has been insulted and we have been looked down upon. We should hurry and make that notebook. That's the only way to truly humiliate them back," she wrote. "Yes, I'll be quick." Pansy kept writing. "The house elf will bring the materials soon. They'll see." 323. Off-field assistance. Hogwarts Castle in the Scottish Highlands grew colder as the Christmas holidays approached. Vizette adjusted the Kool-Aid recipe for winter, adding a touch of ginger root, a pinch of cinnamon, and a drop of salamander blood, while keeping the flavor familiar. The once clear drink took on a warm, fiery red hue. The winter special Kool-Aid was an instant hit and demand soared. The members of MSC were swamped trying to keep up with bottling. Vizette handled brewing the concentrated stock, while Luna processed the ingredients. With the help of ancient magic, potion equilibrium conversion, he could brew several pots of concentrate and then dilute them exactly to meet a day's bottling needs. His full understanding of the invigoration draught let him dial the brewing difficulty up or down as practice. On good days, he even set up 2 cauldrons at once. It was harder, but it sharpened his focus and control over the potion. He still remembered how effortlessly Snape could produce a potion, sometimes without needing a cauldron at all. And since receiving Snape's guidance, he aimed to refine his own potion-making to that level. Fred and George were in charge of the white smoke powder. Alchemy materials took time and patience to process. Only careful, meticulous work would ensure high success and avoid wasting components. "Done. My arms are killing me," Fred groaned. "There are way too many absoluteness bird feathers to handle. I've been at this forever." George stretched and flapped his arms theatrically. "Tell me about it. After all this, I feel like I'm turning into an absoluteness bird myself." Luna set down the pestle and tipped the beech leaf powder from the mortar into a glass bowl. "Bees shouldn't just chase pretty flowers," she said. "Tasting the honey is important too." Fred brightened. "Right. I hadn't realized. Tasting Kool-Aid isn't as fun when you're exhausted from processing everything." "We need outside help," George said, slapping his forehead. "Someone meticulous enough to help us so we can get back to the important work, tasting." Vizette took the bowl from Luna and poured the powder into the cauldron, tracing a calming wand pattern around the rim. "Outside help? Anyone in mind?" Fred and George exchanged glances, suddenly a little sheepish. "Who would be best?" "Lee's been busy with the WWN lately," Fred offered. "Perfect. He could help advertise for us too." "He's been helping with the bag spiders, right?" "Always busy," George agreed. "How about Ron, our dear brother?" "Probably not," Fred said. "We need spider leg powder. Ron would faint just looking at it." Vizette and Luna shared a small, wry smile at the mention of the youngest Weasley. Vizette took the pumpkin seeds Luna handed him and resumed stirring. Fred and George kept tossing out names but couldn't decide. "If there's no one else, maybe I could ask Hannah?" Luna suggested, wiping the mortar clean. Fred hummed. "Hannah? That name rings a bell. Sorted last year. Hannah Abbott, Hufflepuff, Vizette added. We work in the greenhouse sometimes. Professor Sprout speaks highly of her, very meticulous. Fred whistled appreciatively. Hufflepuff, trustworthy. That could work. Let's go ask her right now, George said, already tidying the table. We're practically part of Hufflepuff at this point. They found Hannah, and, to their surprise, Neville too. I didn't expect to see them in the library on the weekend, George grinned. Studying herbology, of all things. Perfect. Neville's round face was full of apprehension. I'm not very good with potion ingredients, he fretted. Professor Snape docked a lot of points from me. Fred nudged him teasingly. We heard that when you're paired with Siamis, you have a knack for making cauldrons explode. That's the kind of talent we need. Explosions. Fireworks, George enthused. You like fireworks, don't you? I remember you buying some from us. You're practically a pyrotechnician. If you're not good at something, you practice, Fred continued. We'll teach you, hand in hand. And you'll be paid your full share of the Kool-Aid money, George added. Neville hesitated. But if I mess up, do I have to make it up? Luna sidled up to Vizette and whispered, He's like an armadillo. He'll roll away at any provocation. Vizette smiled and nodded. Then speak softly. Don't scare him. Hannah's voice was timid. What would we have to do? Grind materials and make a bottle of Kool-Aid? Is this really something you want us to help with? It's very simple, Luna said. It's like a melancholy caterpillar eating nettles and slowly turning into syrup. Just let it happen naturally. Vizette added reassuringly, Luna's right. If you're careful, you won't need to touch any fire or be responsible for the cauldrons. Don't put pressure on yourself. Neville seemed to waver between resolve and nerves. I'll try to do it right, he said, confidence shrinking with every sentence. Fred and George patted his shoulder. Great. While you've still got the energy, let's get started. Just copy what we do. George waved to Hannah. It's the weekend. We've got time and lots of materials. And best of all, there won't be anyone in black robes docking your points. Neville shivered at the mention. Don't say that. Hannah wiped her palms, straightened her back, and, somewhat stiffly but determined, walked toward them. Chapter 324, The Heir Appears. Just as Fred and George had predicted, Hannah and Neville took to Hufflepuff quickly. After a few of the chocolate balls, both of them loosened up, much more than at the start, and began to hit near the targets Fred and George had laid out. Once another box of Kool-Rick had been brewed, the group settled in a circle around the round table. After a sip, color rose in their cheeks. I want to introduce this. Hannah shook the Kool-Rick bottle to my great-granduncle. I think he'd like it. Great-granduncle? Fred asked. Hannah nodded. Yes. Have you ever thought about selling Kool-Rick outside of school? Selling it outside? Fred and George's faces lit up. Do you have connections? Fred asked eagerly. Could you promote it to more people? So we can make more galleons, George finished. Yes. Hannah's cheeks flushed. I can vouch for it from a Hufflepuff perspective. If we sold it at the Leaky Cauldron, it'd be a hit. The Leaky Cauldron? Vizette murmured. Could it be Mr. Tom? Old Tom. Fred's eyes widened. That hairstyle. George glanced at Hannah's thick, golden hair. If you hadn't said anything, who'd have guessed? Vizette nodded. Customers at the Leaky Cauldron often called the owner Tom or Old Tom. He hadn't expected Tom to be Hannah's great-granduncle. George's curiosity flared. Neville, what about you? Any impressive relatives? Fred supplied an example. Or some secret identity, like Vizette. Probably the youngest potions master in England, Hannah exclaimed. Vizette, you're already a potions master? I thought, otherwise, how would we make Kool-Rick? George chuckled and burped. This one's ministry compliant, you know. Neville scratched his head, a flash of pride showing. My parents, both Aurors. Fred whistled. Aurors, that's brilliant, the best of the best. Auror, Longbottom, Longbottom. George stroked his chin. Neville, are your parents Frank and Alice Longbottom? A flicker of pain crossed Neville's face before he forced a smile. They're doing well. At that moment, Vizette felt something shift and pulled out his notebook. A bookmark was tucked inside with a very short message. Come to the entrance of the Chamber of Secrets. It was Dumbledore's summons. The heir hadn't given up and had triggered the magical alarm in the abandoned lavatory. Vizette felt a low, eager tension, the petrification spell, the final stage of this mystery. going into the forbidden forest with Luna. So many things pulled on his attention, all temporarily suspended by the air lurking in the shadows. He stood up. Luna rose with him. She mouthed, "There will be no danger." Vizette only mouthed back, "Headmaster Dumbledore and the others are already there." Luna nodded and hooked her pinky at him. Vizette smiled and hooked his in return, mouthing, "Don't worry. I'll be back soon." "Madame Pomfrey also told me to keep an eye on you," Luna mouthed. "Got it," Vizette mouthed. "I won't go to the hospital wing, at least not me." Luna nodded emphatically, clenching her fists in a silent cheer. Watching Vizette walk away, Fred protested, "Can't you two just say it normally? This is making me nervous. What did you say to each other?" George grinned. "I feel like I need Snape right now, some yellow gentian and honeysuckle. Hannah, Neville, want some?" "Why would we eat those?" Neville scratched his head. "Yellow gentian, is that for fever? Do you catch a cold from drinking Coolrick?" Luna laughed, a delicate smile brightening her face. Fred's expression folded into something amused and odd. "Such familiar phrasing. Are you imitating Vizette?" Neville shrugged. "Vizette told me to learn other branches of magic through herbology. So I memorized a lot of things. It's helped. I learn faster now, except in potions." Hannah agreed. "Same here." Vizette left the stone corridor and hurried toward the abandoned lavatory. A tabby cat trotted beside him, and with a quick ripple of transfiguration, became Professor McGonagall. They moved briskly down the corridor as Filch's grating voice echoed, "What are you lot doing here? Show me which school rule you've broken." Students scattered in alarm. "Filch is coming! Run!" That had been Dumbledore's plan. Use Filch to clear the corridor so they wouldn't attract unnecessary attention. The path was clear, and they slipped into the abandoned lavatory. Dumbledore was already there, standing in front of the rows of sinks. A small notebook made of glittering golden dust hovered before him, the revealing effect of a tracking spell. "Albus, do we really need to bring Vizette?" McGonagall asked, worry in her voice. "A basilisk is far too dangerous for a student." Dumbledore waved his wand and made the golden dust waver out of sight. "Minerva, you will remember last year's transfiguration before the Christmas holidays." McGonagall frowned. "You mean he can transfigure into Devil's Snare and thereby gain its sensory abilities?" "Yes," Vizette said. "I won't look the basilisk in the eye. I have a reason I need to find it." "We can add extra protection," Dumbledore suggested, conjuring a pair of half-moon spectacles. "These will help." Vizette put them on and felt something odd beneath his fingertips. He pressed the lenses and his fingers slipped through. The lenses were formed of flowing water. "Lenses made of water," he said. "I understand." "The water here. Madame Norris saw the basilisk in the water and was petrified," Dumbledore said. "If he caught you directly, not even these would help. But with these glasses, you will be safe. We won't need coffins for this, only mandrake restorative draughts when the time comes." Vizette walked to the sink with the serpent pattern on its tap. He leaned forward, hissed, "Open," and the porcelain vanished, leaving an exposed stretch of thick pipe leading downward. 325. Real evidence and real criminal? The Chamber of Secrets entrance. Only Parselmouths can open it. No wonder it wasn't found back then. Professor McGonagall said, her voice thick with feeling. "I'll go down first." Before she finished, her body contracted. In an instant, she had shifted into a small tabby cat and darted into the pipe. Bubblehead charm, night vision. Vizette cast, wrapping himself in a shimmering membrane and following into the tunnel. With the night vision charm, he could see McGonagall ahead of him. Unlike his sliding motion, the tabby moved with incredible ease, bounding as if over flat ground. She leapt farther and farther ahead until she slipped from sight. If it had been an ordinary cat, Vizette thought as he slid, it wouldn't have been able to move like that. Her fur wasn't even specked with dust. She must be using magic, which meant, could magic be performed in animagus form? Or was this some unusual ability? After an unknown span of time, the steep pipe leveled out and Vizette slid out, landing on a floor littered with bones. He looked around, but saw neither the tabby nor McGonagall's human form. The animagus's stealth was strong. She had gone ahead to scout. Vizette didn't rush forward. He slipped into a corner of the tunnel and waited for Dumbledore, toggling the spell shell repeatedly so it would appear and vanish on command to avoid mistakes later. Only when Dumbledore also slid out did Vizette step forward. "Headmaster Dumbledore, Professor McGonagall has gone ahead to scout, he reported. Dumbledore smiled faintly and began to trail his wand gently through the air. This place needs a bit of tidying. As he spoke, the bones on the floor trembled and rose, following his steps like two long strands of thread being drawn out. He kept the wand steady, guiding the bones as if flying a kite. Vizette, when you used Dobby's memory, was the fulcrum fear? Dumbledore asked. And when you established that fear, was the specific target image you used the Lord Voldemort you saw last school year? He continued. Yes, Vizette answered honestly. At the time, we thought it was the most convenient. Dobby was terrified of Lord Voldemort, so using Voldemort's image left the deepest impression. Convenient and indelible. Dumbledore nodded. Did you look at Dobby's memories? I didn't have time. Didn't we discover the Chamber of Secrets entrance then? Vizette replied. We explored the actual chamber, and after that, I ended up in the hospital wing. A lot happened that night, Dumbledore agreed, then shifted topics. Vizette, what do you think of the House of Malfoy? Vizette hesitated. Which aspect do you mean, Draco himself, or the house's history? Draco? Dumbledore stroked his beard. It seems you two have interacted. We're not in the same house, Vizette said. I've only seen him a few times, but he's been fairly friendly. Fairly friendly, Dumbledore mused. That's a good start. A soft halo of light appeared up ahead, a charm cast by McGonagall. We need to hurry. The girl is almost at the door, she whispered. A girl? Can you tell who it is? Dumbledore asked. I couldn't see clearly. I kept my distance to avoid suspicion. McGonagall shook her head. But it's not a Gryffindor. Most likely a Slytherin, then. Dumbledore sighed. Let's go. At the Chamber of Secrets door, they found it open, an eerie green light spilling out and a figure being drawn toward it. Dumbledore motioned them back. You two hide. Let me deal with whatever's calling it. He raised his wand and directed the strands of bones into the green light. Hissing sounds and urgent footsteps issued from within, then commands in Parseltongue echoed, Speak to me, Slytherin, greatest of Hogwarts' 4 founders. The basilisk is coming out, Vizette blurted. I heard the summon. Thank you for telling me. Let's see. Dumbledore's face darkened as he studied the doorway, probing with his wand. At the cave entrance, another mechanism triggered only by Parseltongue. Fascinating. A rumble rolled from the chamber's depths, and the whispers Vizette recognized drifted back. Tear. Then a roaring clatter, like a violent storm, filled the passage. The pressure in the chamber rose. Vizette felt his hair prick as the force washed through him. It lasted only a few breaths. The seriousness on Dumbledore's face eased, and his usual kindly smile returned. It's a big one, he said, but easier to handle than I expected. Hagrid would be quite taken with it. Unfortunately, McGonagall said, it's far too dangerous even for Hagrid to care for. It would be very difficult. Dumbledore gave a small shake of his wand. The green light vanished, replaced by a gentle radiant glow that flooded the chamber. Vizette's eyes fell on 2 enormous armored skeletal figures, nearly the size of Salazar Slytherin's statue. They worked together, locking down half the basilisk's body. Bone plates covered its eyes, bound by the giant's grasp. The basilisk itself was enormous, at least 15 meters long, its scales a vivid, dangerous green. In front of the skeletal giants stood an intricate cage of bone, and inside it a girl in a school uniform clutched a notebook to her chest. Her eyes were wild, and a fierce, almost deranged energy radiated from her face, as if she had lost her grasp on sanity. Pansy, Miss Pansy Parkinson? Professor McGonagall frowned. It's her? Pansy's face was a mask of fury, veins standing out on her temples. She beat at the skeletal cage with frantic, bloody hands. So what if it's me? She spat. You're all sinners of Hogwarts, sinners who dragged this school into the abyss. I'll purify this place. Mudbloods won't remain. Although she spoke to Dumbledore, her eyes never left Vizette. They burned with pure hatred. From somewhere in the darkness came the basilisk's low, hungry voice. Want to kill. Taste of food. So hungry. Pansy bared her teeth and twisted in the cage. Between a hiss and a snarl, she ordered, Wait for my command. Kill the smallest one. He'll taste good. Good, good. I want to eat. The basilisk quieted as if obeying, conserving strength under a previously given command. Vizette felt the urgency. He had promised someone he would return quickly. Headmaster Dumbledore, he said, the basilisk still has strength. Pansy, impatient, let out the loudest hiss she could manage. Kill him! Dumbledore was faster. He lifted his wand and pointed at the two armored skeletal giants. They erupted in a rain of clattering bones and instantly pinned the basilisk as it tried to coil. The creature wailed, "Hungry. I want to eat. I want to live." "Miss Parkinson," Dumbledore said with a cold smile, "you don't seem to have learned from your father's mistake. I haven't lost my magic. Controlling a basilisk," he added, turning to Vizette, "is still a dangerous thing. Since you promised to return quickly, we should hurry." Vizette didn't hesitate. He raised his wand and poured out an ancient charm. Nox, improved. A pitch-black bubble bloomed at once, swallowing the basilisk and the two skeletal giants. Closing his eyes, he shifted shape with an older art, Devil's Net, and the net drew him up, letting him climb the giants and reach the basilisk's head. In his mind, a python shape coalesced, tracing the rune N. An idea struck him, and he spoke the rune's name aloud. Naudis. Nauthiz. The struggling basilisk went stone still, its color drained to a grayish white, a dead pallor that wasn't light and could not be hidden by the Nox charm. The grayness poured toward Vizette like molten metal, as if trying to swallow him. He remembered Salazar Slytherin's teachings, two pillars, ancient magic power and communication. The Obscurus core in his chest throbbed. He set his wand like an awl and drove it into the basilisk's skull. Silver-blue sparks exploded, memory fragments flooded his mind. The basilisk's entire life, from the egg hatching to its long vigil in the Chamber of Secrets. Those fragments knit together into something like a lock. The empty shell of the spell command in his guide needed that memory to be opened and filled. He murmured first, then shifted to Parseltongue. "Hiss, I will complete the remaining spell command contract with you, the command from petrification." The basilisk, rigid but not deaf, replied in a weak, stubborn hiss, "I want to live. To live." Vizette softened his tone in Parseltongue. "You can live. We have the air." When he heard the word air, the creature hesitated, then repeated, "I want to live to live." Live for what? For survival? For the air? To cleanse Hogwarts? Vizette threaded the memories together, thinking fast. Salazar Slytherin had bred the basilisk to survive. The air was Slytherin's descendant. Cleansing was the founder's command. He pressed the wand to his temple and drew out one particular memory, the one of his meeting with Dean Slytherin in the mirror world. "Look," he thought, and let that thread drift down to merge with the basilisk's mind. "Live," the basilisk breathed, then named a master. Salazar Slytherin, my master, my only master." The gray pallor lifted. The basilisk's body softened. It stopped fighting and hung limply from the skeletal giant as if relaxed. "Salazar Slytherin, my master, my only master." A small, almost astonished warmth touched Vizette. He had assumed the creature acted on base instinct, hunger, kill, survive. But now he understood that without some identity, some tie to its creator, its instincts alone might not have sustained it over 1,000 years. "I will take you to him," Vizette whispered. "Just as you saw, I know where Dean Slytherin is." As the basilisk calmed, the empty shell of the spell command in his mind shifted. The grayish white of the creature's memory flooded the shell, filling it completely and turning it into a true command. His wizard combat guide flipped open and rewrote itself. Spell command, some properties, oppression, binding, intensity. Guide, channel with ancient magic power, exhibits SA-related properties. His earlier calculation had been right. The cost of this spell command fell to Lord Voldemort, so the guide showed no further details. Outside the black bubble, Pansy's voice rang with contempt. "I don't know why he went in. Give up! Not everyone can take command of a basilisk." Vizette pressed the wand to his throat and cast a sonorous to magnify his voice. "I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you." Dumbledore's tone carried satisfaction. With a slight, barely perceptible motion of his wand, the skeletal giants instantly lost their cohesion and collapsed into heaps of clattering bone. 327. Maybe they were just scapegoats? As the two armored skeletal giants crumbled, Vizette gently patted the basilisk's scales. "Close your eyes, then let me down." "All right." The basilisk twisted, coiling into a tight ball. It lowered its head and let Vizette slide to the ground. After he stepped away, it drew its head into the center of its coils. Remember, Salazar Slytherin." "Of course," Vizette answered in Parseltongue. Pansy hissed in frustration. "What are you doing? Everything he said was a lie. Finish him." The basilisk, however, showed no response, tightening its coils instead. Pansy grew more frantic, pounding at the skeletal cage with the notebook in her hand. The skin on her palm split open. Fresh blood welled up. Vizette watched as the notebook absorbed every drop. None fell to the floor, and the cover and pages remained unstained. "Headmaster Dumbledore, that notebook," Vizette said. "It's enchanted. It could be the key to the Chamber of Secrets, perhaps the heir's heirloom." Dumbledore blinked twice and regarded him. "You might try some new methods to retrieve it." "New methods?" Vizette stepped forward and planted himself in front of Pansy. She leveled a furious glare at him. "You obscurial. I don't know why Draco associates with you. You're not even as good as a mudblood. Is that how you speak of yourself?" Vizette raised an eyebrow, his tone cool and clipped. "How pathetic, a witch who thinks the only way to solve things is to smash a cage with a book. Did you flunk every class that requires a wand? Your movements are more like a troll swinging a club." Dumbledore and McGonagall exchanged looks, lips pressed together to hide faint smiles. Vizette's sarcasm carried a trace of Professor Snape. Pansy's eyes widened in fury. "You called me a troll!" She yanked her wand free. "Expelli. Vizette, stand back!" Professor McGonagall cried and drew her own wand. Before Pansy could complete a spell, her arms stiffened. A gray-white color crept from the hand holding the wand through her entire body. She froze like stone. What is happening?" McGonagall breathed, adjusting her glasses. "If it were just a simple spell, nothing would have happened," Vizette said, taking the notebook from Pansy's locked fingers. Her malice was unusually strong. Dumbledore stroked his beard. "Minerva, it's a small enchantment peculiar to him. Don't worry yourself." Vizette opened the notebook and whispered, "Aguamenti." He cast the water-making charm, pouring a stream over the pages. The notebook did not darken. It drank the water and, as if compelled, revealed 2 lines of text. "Hold the notebook, and it will guide you to become the heir of the great Salazar Slytherin. Offer your blood, and the notebook will guide you to the Chamber of Secrets to continue the great work left unfinished by Salazar Slytherin." He flipped through more pages. Maps unfolded. Routes from the Slytherin common room to the abandoned lavatory, each path marked. On the page showing the lavatory, a notation appeared by the sink. "Search for the snake-shaped mark on the sink. Hold the notebook and say to the snake-shaped mark, 'Open.'" At the Chamber of Secrets page, further instructions read, "Hold the notebook, close your eyes, and in the most respectful tone say to the statue of the great Salazar Slytherin, 'Speak to me, Slytherin, the greatest of Hogwarts' 4 founders.'" Using his magic eye, blending alchemy knowledge and magical crafting, Vizette tested the notebook's enchantments and its nature. After a careful examination, he handed it to Dumbledore. "Headmaster, it's bound with unplottable magic. That's why Pansy Parkinson vanished from normal detection. It also uses a rare charm to imprison a rune spore within its pages. I suspect that is why Miss Parkinson can speak parcel tongue. Perhaps that's why the basilisk did not obey her completely," he continued. "But why a rune spore? And why make Pansy and the notebook scapegoats? That's only a hypothesis. I don't have hard proof." Dumbledore listened, waving his wand to probe the notebook as Vizette finished. "In such a short time, that's an excellent deduction," he said, setting down his wand. "Whether scapegoats or not, these are matters we must consider further." He looked up at the statue of Salazar Slytherin. "Shall we see whether there is anything else inside the statue besides the basilisk?" Vizette turned back to the basilisk. "We're going in to take a look, then I'll bring you to the Dean of Slytherin." "All right, quickly," the basilisk rumbled. Vizette faced the statue. "Speak to me, Slytherin, the greatest of Hogwarts' 4 founders." The stone mouth moved, widening until it was a black cavern. Dumbledore waved his wand. The scattered bones around the chamber rose and knit together into a broad staircase of bone that led down into the darkness. Minerva, already having shifted into her tabby form, was the first to leap onto the bony steps and disappear into the cavern. "Asking me to go find Lucius? What a coincidence!" Vizette thought, and whether it was an illusion or not, he read a flicker of excitement in the tabby cat's leap. Professor McGonagall was usually composed. Moments that displayed Gryffindor flair were rare. The cave entrance opened into a spacious tunnel, wide enough for 2 basilisks to pass side by side. Stone steps led down into a chamber that had been ravaged as if by a terrible fire. Mottled black scorch marks covered the walls, while ash lay piled thickly along the edges. The ground where the basilisk had crawled was relatively clean, as if the beasts had scraped it bare. To destroy the chamber like this, McGonagall sighed. There must be some secret here. Vizette frowned. Some kind of secret, perhaps a curse. If Lord Voldemort had opened the Chamber of Secrets 50 years ago, it was entirely possible he'd burned it to conceal whatever lay within. Dumbledore's low exclamation, very typical of his character, "What a pity," seemed to confirm that suspicion. Everything in the stone chamber was ruined beyond repair. While Dumbledore and McGonagall made a thorough inspection, Vizette gathered samples of the ash, intending to take both the ash and the basilisk back to Salazar Slytherin. Vizette lifted the petrification from Pansy Parkinson and left the Chamber of Secrets first, the basilisk trailing beside him. After they had gone, McGonagall finally spoke. "Albus, Vizette is right. Miss Parkinson is very likely a scapegoat." Dumbledore nodded. "Of course, it's the sort of trick Voldemort, especially as a student, would favor." "He used Hagrid once to clear his name and continue his studies," McGonagall said. "What new trick has he thought of this time?" "Do you think we should search again?" McGonagall asked. "Miss Parkinson is a Slytherin. Perhaps we should start in Slytherin House." "It will be trouble for Severus," Dumbledore admitted. "I need to organize the clues, confirm where Miss Parkinson went, and see if anything else turns up." Dumbledore questioned several portraits to reconstruct Pansy's rote, then returned to the headmaster's office. Severus Snape was already waiting there. Dumbledore greeted him with a smile. "How did it go? Any progress?" Snape's brow rose. "What did you do with Dobby? Why is Lord Voldemort's image present in Dobby's memory, and why does it overlap with Vizette's?" Dumbledore took his seat, intrigued. "I'm more curious about Mr. Malfoy's reaction." "He fainted when he viewed the Pensieve," Snape said, his expression tight. "At the moment, Vizette in Dobby's memory said, 'I want to torment Dobby with Crucio to learn the secret of house elf-free apparition.' He fainted." Dumbledore steepled his fingers. "It seems Mr. Malfoy has a deep, ingrained memory of Voldemort in that form." "Crucio," Snape recalled flatly. "They used to amuse themselves with it." "Amuse themselves with it," Dumbledore mused. "Crucio is not pleasant. What are they planning now?" "To give Dobby as a gift to Vizette, so he can torment him," Snape said, narrowing his eyes. "That's presumably what they intended." "That's one reason," Dumbledore agreed. "But I have good news. We've caught the heir. Unfortunately, she's a Slytherin, Pansy Parkinson." "A coincidence," Snape said, crossing his arms. "Let me guess when she was caught, when you asked me to take Dobby away, wasn't it?" "That was the time," Dumbledore said with a faint smile. "Coincidence indeed. Besides finding the notebook that commanded the basilisk, I also took care of the creature." "Is that so? Where's the notebook?" Snape asked. "That notebook is enchanted," Dumbledore explained. "Vizette wanted to study it, so I gave it to him. The principle isn't complicated. It uses charms like an undetectable extension to evade certain kinds of magical detection, and a rune spore is imprisoned inside it. That's how it could open the Chamber of Secrets and communicate with the basilisk." Snape snorted. "How perfectly logical. I suspect Pansy didn't craft the notebook properly." Dumbledore waved a hand. "We have skilled healers and potion masters. I don't think the harm will be great." "Since Pansy had the notebook," Snape said, "I'll investigate within Slytherin for any abnormalities." "I've prepared a route map," Dumbledore said, drawing a piece of parchment from his pocket. "These are most of the places she passed through before entering the abandoned girl's lavatory." Snape scanned the map quickly and stood. "I'll go at once." Snape followed the route, checking each location on the map. He found nothing unusual, no traces of dark arts, and very little ordinary magic beyond the detritus of typical school pranks. He frowned as he looked at the next location. Gilderoy Lockhart's office. Lockhart opened his door in curlers, voice high and theatrical. "Aha! Let me see who it is. Why, it's C." Before Lockhart could finish the name, Snape's wand was at his throat. Lockhart clapped a trembling hand to his windpipe and went silent, eyes wide with panic. He flailed at Snape's arm, trying to block him. "Get out of the way," Snape said disdainfully, giving the man a shove and forcing his way in. Outside in the corridor, Harry and his two friends happened to see the scene. As the office door slammed, Harry whispered, "Hiss! Snape and Lockhart. Are they going to duel?" "Probably not," Hermione said, worried. "But what a choice." "Do you think they'll both get hurt?" Ron added, scratching his head. 329, Professor of Defense Against the Dark Arts. "Ha ha! Probably not," Harry said, stroking his chin. "I think Snape will win." Ron stared at him as if seeing him for the first time, disbelief on his face. "You've changed. You're so different." "I'm just deducing from the facts," Harry said quickly. "After class, Vizette usually goes to a professor for advice. Think about it. Who's been asked for advice the least?" "Oh," Ron realized. "Lockhart." All right, to the library," Hermione declared, voice sharp with purpose. "Since we got Ravenclaw's book list, we should study." "Look, more evidence," Harry said excitedly. "Here's Vizette's book list. Proof enough that it's better to find books yourself than to sit through Lockhart's class." "Then let's go." Hermione glanced toward the open corridor. "If Snape comes out and deducts points, it'll be a disaster." "Right," Ron and Harry agreed, and they hurried after Hermione toward the moving staircase. At that moment, Snape appeared in the doorway, lips pursed as he stared down the empty corridor. Lockhart was beside him, making a muffled roar. Several hair rollers had fallen free from his coiffure. He couldn't speak, so he kept flapping his hands against the wall in a kind of theatrical protest. Snape raised his wand, pointing it at Lockhart's nose. "Now, I'll ask you one question, and you will answer it." Lockhart finally found his voice, though he looked terrified at the wand. His hands went up. "Professor Snape, let's be reasonable. Ask whatever you like. I'll tell you everything." Snape's voice was low and cold. "Did Pansy Parkinson come to see you?" Under those dark, penetrating eyes, Lockhart looked exposed. "When? I really don't know." "No one came to see you?" Snape pressed. "I don't know anything." Lockhart shook his head. "I've been answering letters all day. You know, I'm a famous author. I have lots of readers to reply to." Snape's eyes narrowed. He shoved Lockhart aside, raised his wand, and snapped, "Trace reveal." Lockhart shrieked and crouched, as if trying to make himself smaller. A golden vortex erupted, scattering fine golden specks that hung in the air. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Lockhart, braver for a second, glanced out the doorway, saw no one, and swallowed hard. "You see? I told the truth. I didn't lie." Snape ignored him. He flicked his wand and the gold changed to black, drifting down in wisps onto the desk. He pulled a perfume bottle from the clutter. When the powder met it, it dispersed. Lockhart broke into a cold sweat. This is amortentia," he stammered. "I didn't use much. Just a little." Snape said nothing, holding the bottle. Lockhart babbled on, voice thin. "It's very expensive. I don't give it to ordinary readers, just my most loyal fans. They love my books." Snape's lids drooped. He looked at Lockhart as if at something worthless. "If you dare use that on a student—" "I would never," Lockhart blurted. "No, of course not. Absolutely not, I swear it." "Gilderoy Lockhart, hear me. I can detect this potion. Don't let me ever find out you've used it on a student." "Or else," Lockhart whispered. Snape's tone went colder, almost amused in its menace. "Otherwise, I'll cut you into little pieces, pull out your bones one by one, heal you, and then pull them out again." Lockhart shrank further into himself. I promise. I promise." Snape said nothing more. He took out Marauder's map and was turning to go when something made him pivot with lightning speed. He raised his wand. A jet of red light shot from it. Lockhart, wand still in his hand, was hit mid-syllable. His eyes rolled up and he dropped, as if struck by a battering blow, flying backward in an arc and slamming against the wall with a heavy thud. Snape sneered as he looked down at the collapsed figure. Order of Merlin, 3rd class. Honorary member of the Dark Arts Defense League. Defense against the Dark Arts Professor. He gave a short, contemptuous laugh and walked away. "No discoveries?" Snape tossed the map casually onto Dumbledore's desk as he returned to the headmaster's office. Dumbledore looked up, studying him closely. He noticed the sneer that lingered at the corner of Snape's mouth. Did something interesting happen? "He should probably be given a blanket," Snape said, sitting opposite. "He must still be lying on the floor." "You mean he actually confronted you?" Dumbledore sounded a little surprised. "I thought he wouldn't dare. What did you do to him?" "Just a nonverbal stupefy. He fainted anyway." Snape's sneer was unchanged. "Fainted rather easily." Dumbledore murmured and smoothed his robes. I approved his request for a gathering. Snape raised an eyebrow. What request? Lectures on hair-rolling technique? A dueling club, Dumbledore said with an odd expression. After the recent attacks, he thinks everyone should learn to defend themselves. To defend themselves? Snape's eyebrows climbed. If his concern is only keeping hairstyles intact, those rollers may be very useful. Dumbledore gave a small, indulgent smile. Perhaps. I approved it, hoping there will be no complications. Perhaps, Snape said with cold relish, he'll be thinking of packing his bags and leaving. Don't tell me you found nothing tied to the dark arts and you're relaxed about it. Snape's eyes narrowed as he watched Dumbledore snap a piece off a popsicle. Dumbledore handed the broken half to him. Without the basilisk, it won't be so easy for the heir to harm Hogwarts in the same way. Snape crossed his arms and leaned back, not taking the popsicle. What if he allies with certain pureblood families and creates trouble by other means? Dumbledore set his half-eaten treat on a plate. Then remove me from Hogwarts, appoint a head from a pureblood house, and let them institute their reforms. If the heir is prepared to go that far, I'd be delighted to see which pureblood families are less well-behaved than they appear, Dumbledore added with a mild smile. A mocking curl touched Snape's mouth, and a cold light sparked in his eyes. No wonder Cornelius Fudge is increasingly wary of you. Dumbledore only shrugged, taking another bite. I simply think Hogwarts would be better off if some unstable elements were dealt with. The Prophet won't print that for now, Dumbledore went on. Have you read The Quibbler lately? It keeps getting more interesting. I've subscribed for the year. Snape rose. Since you've already made your plans, I have nothing more to say. Oh, one more thing. As Snape started to leave, Dumbledore called after him. Lockhart's application for the dueling club mentioned an assistant. I put your name down. Do as you please, Snape said over his shoulder, glancing back. I hope he doesn't run off in a panic overnight. Vizette wove the ancient spell, self-shaping in the form of Devil's Snare, so it curled around the basilisk like a bracelet of living vines. The two of them slipped through the pipes and arrived at the chamber where the mirror of Erised was kept. Salazar, Slytherin, mirror. The basilisk writhed in front of the glass, clearly eager. Vizette hissed softly in Parseltongue. Close your eyes and follow my devil's snare. We're going to see Dean Slytherin. The basilisk shut its eyes and urged him on. Good. Quick, quick. Vizette cast Magic Eye. Last time, the mirror of Erised had changed, bursting into silver-blue light. This time, it did nothing. The three familiar images on the glass were gone, and for a moment, the mirror simply reflected their shapes. Vizette thought of the rune Dean Slytherin had mentioned. Perhaps it needed the rune as a key. Using the Guardian meditation method, Vizette brought the snake-shaped rune, Nothiz, into razor-sharp focus in his mind, projecting it toward the glass. The surface seemed to mirror his thought, the rune forming on the mirror as if it were painted in light. Nothiz, he whispered the name, and the mirror of Erised finally flared with intense silver-blue light that swallowed him and the basilisk. When Vizette opened his eyes, he was inside the mirrored world. Unlike the uncanny emptiness of his first entry, this place centered on a statue of Salazar Slytherin. As color returned to Slytherin's face, the serpent carved into the statue's base uncoiled and became a long, winding staircase. Faster than I expected. Salazar rose slowly, his voice hissing in Parseltongue. Long time no see. The basilisk responded in a burst of excited hisses. Salazar, Slytherin, Salazar, Slytherin. Although its tone remained cold and venomous, Vizette noticed something else underneath, an almost childlike loyalty. The basilisk's natural instincts, those fang-sharp poisonous elements, were still there, but layered over them was a persistent devotion it had slowly come to feel for Slytherin. You've changed, Slytherin said with something like fondness, stroking the basilisk's scales. You've done well. The basilisk coiled around him and murmured, almost drowsy, Won't, sleepy. Slytherin nodded and patted its head gently. Of course. You may sleep. The enormous creature rose and fell on Slytherin's promise, and then sank into a deep, calm sleep. Vizette watched it with mixed feelings. Now, in this quiet, the basilisk seemed more like a simple-minded child than a monstrous executioner. It's just a magical creature, Slytherin said, as if answering his thought. Naturally, it won't be complex. Vizette still looked puzzled. But it didn't feed on Muggle-born students. It ate small animals and other creatures. Slytherin tilted his head. What is the greatest difference between the basilisk and other magical beasts? Vizette frowned as memories and fragments about the creature flashed through his mind. It was specially bred like an acromantula. You think I raised it, Slytherin said. Interesting. So you've read the records and studied its habits. Yes, its appetite is for flesh, yet it confined itself to the chamber, taking small game. Its purpose wasn't cleansing, but guarding. Cleansing is a necessary means, Slytherin reflected. There is filth that needs a more effective cleaner, but that is not the whole point. Vizette pressed on. Dean Slytherin, I don't understand. What is your true aim? Slytherin stroked his beard and stared at him with keen interest. Fascinating research. You went to considerable lengths to pass your test. Do you know how later generations perceive me? He smiled, not unkindly. I can satisfy your curiosity. The matter of pureblood is to me irrelevant. If one were to prioritize that, how many talents would we lose? Powerful, shrewd, resourceful, resolute, disdainful of needless rules, and possessing an ambition rarer than courage. These are the qualities I prize. Ambition rarer than courage? Vizette remembered the rite before the sorting ceremony, when older students exaggerated the dread of the sorting. A thought formed. Could the tales of the chamber and the basilisk actually be a test of some kind? A way to sift out those with secret motives, especially those who are Muggle-born. Slytherin's expression did not change, but something like approval gleamed in his eyes. 331. Give them a ride. Slytherin smiled faintly. Yes, they only ever talked about how terrifying the sorting ceremony is, that you might have to face trolls, hippogriffs, dragons. I don't think that would scare away those with real ill intent, he went on. Especially some Muggle-borns. Many of them wouldn't have the strength of will needed. All the disasters and misfortunes that happened in those days could be blamed on wizards. If they could truly steel themselves and abandon their prejudices against magic, I would accept them. So I left the basilisk, a real present danger. It would occasionally roam the castle and warn those incompetent enough to be a problem. If you want to stay at Hogwarts, then be careful. Hearing that, Vizette finally understood. With the witch hunts of the Middle Ages and the fragile state of the newly founded school, both internal and external pressures had been enormous. Determining the true intent of every student seeking knowledge, resorting to legilimency to read hearts, would have been intolerably cumbersome. It was easier to set up obstacles and deter many applicants. The propaganda about the terror of the sorting ceremony, Slytherin said, was a preliminary screen for Muggle-borns and, indirectly, a way to raise the overall quality of students. That was intentional on the part of the four of us. He gave a small, self-satisfied shrug. But it wasn't enough for me, so I spread tales of the basilisk and the Chamber of Secrets to frighten away those with malicious aims and keep early Hogwarts stable. Dean Slytherin, that was something you all discussed? The quarrel between you and Godric Gryffindor, Vizette began. Why would I need to consult them? Slytherin interrupted, raising an eyebrow. If they couldn't see the necessity of this, they weren't fit to build Hogwarts with me. Vizette nodded. He understood what Slytherin meant. Tacit understanding ran deep, and he'd experienced it himself. They care about certain things, Slytherin continued, so some matters, of course, had to be handled by me. I'm more than happy to take care of them. For example, Vizette ventured, what if there was a student who truly endangered Hogwarts, but there was no evidence? Would you let the basilisk? Or else? Slytherin's smile turned sharp. Some rubbish wants to die, then we'll oblige them. And the deaths of those traitors only burnish my name, he added. Haven't the records you've examined already shown that? Only my name, Salazar Slytherin, has been remembered to this day, he said, a touch of pride in his voice. Of course, it has been misused by fools. Misused by fools? Vizette asked tentatively. Do you mean the proponents of pure blood theory? Yes, Slytherin said with a mocking curl of his lip. The name of that theory is laughable, but those fools are not worth more discussion. Vizette wanted to press further, but simply nodded. I know what you mean, Slytherin said, arching an eyebrow. The death of that Ravenclaw, in some measure, it was an accident. This is also why, when I saw you, the new guardian, I set that test. It was to find my pet. Since you could appear before me, Hogwarts must be stable enough. The basilisk's duty is done. It's time for it to rest. He laid a hand on the scales of the sleeping basilisk. The great creature stirred, but did not open its eyes. It flicked its tongue, tasting the air to confirm Slytherin's presence, then drifted back to sleep. Looking back, that approach had its limitations, Slytherin admitted, just as my statements and actions regarding Muggleborns were later twisted by fools. Vizette swallowed before asking, Dean Slytherin, if I had truly killed it, what would you have done? Slytherin regarded him for a long moment. I knew Ravenclaw well. From the moment I learned you possessed the shell of the commandment, I believed you would not kill it. But I must admit, you handled the test admirably. What surprised me further was that you've begun to truly understand the soul. Vizette produced the small bag of ashes he had recovered from the stone chamber within the Chamber of Secrets. Dean Slytherin, I found this inside the stone chamber, through the statue. Cleaned out? Slytherin's eyes narrowed slightly. What was kept in that stone chamber were records, research into certain magics. His voice softened, as if remembering. Mostly studies of commandment contracts, and a small portion on bloodline magic. Noticing the hint of emotion, Vizette asked, Is there anything I can do for you? Slytherin smiled, half amusement, half calculation. A pure Ravenclaw, yet peacocking like a Hufflepuff. No wonder he was welcomed so easily, truly cunning. Things that are destroyed needn't be retrieved. After all, that is the fate of all things. He glanced at the bag of ashes. I envy them in a way. Envy? Vizette echoed, puzzled. Slytherin waved the notion away. Never mind. Back to the matter at hand. Since the test is complete, you deserve a reward. Now that you understand the soul, you should begin to understand the body. Are you interested in bloodline magic? Vizette's reply was immediate. Of course, I'm very interested. Slytherin had anticipated the answer. When it comes to knowledge, Ravenclaws are even more avaricious than snakes. Dean Slytherin, you said the body and soul are interconnected. Vizette said, thinking aloud, that the soul can change the body and the body can affect the soul? Where to begin? Slytherin stood and clasped his hands behind his back. First, a few questions. Do you understand alchemy? Only in part, Vizette admitted. I've dabbled, read a few books, mostly on materials and their properties. Slytherin fixed him with a look. Then tell me, what, in your opinion, is the core concept of alchemy? Vizette thought, then spoke carefully. Alchemy's essence, I would say, is transformation and regeneration. If you extend it, examples would be the Philosopher's Stone and the Elixir of Life. 332. Soul, blood, body. What a cunning little Ravenclaw. Slytherin smiled faintly. It's enough that you can think in those terms. Didn't you notice? What you just said about transformation and regeneration already answers the question you posed, Vizette replied. Answered the question? Vizette looked at the resting basilisk, brow furrowing as he searched his knowledge for the right example. He thought of the legendary Auror Alastair Moody, whom his roommate Anthony had mentioned in stories. In many cases, an Auror could regrow a lost eye with potions and healer's care, just as Harry's missing arm bones were restored with Skelegrow. But Moody couldn't simply regrow his eye. He had to replace it with a magical one. Vizette spoke slowly, thinking it through. Dean Slytherin, could it be like the relationship between the Philosopher's Stone and the Elixir of Life? The body and soul can transform and regenerate one another, Slytherin said. But like the Philosopher's Stone and the Elixir of Life, there is a hierarchy. The soul takes the lead. If the soul remains whole, physical defects are easily repaired. But if the soul is damaged, the damage shows up in the body in real time. Repairing the body? That falls into potion knowledge, Slytherin added, stroking his fingers. It seems you're stronger in potions than in alchemy. Vizette nodded. Slytherin asked, if you had to pick a potion that best illustrates the relationship between body and soul, which would you choose? Vizette didn't hesitate. Polyjuice potion. Polyjuice? Slytherin echoed. Yes, Vizette went on. Polyjuice uses someone's hair to dress another's soul in another body's appearance. It's like putting a layer of someone else's skin over your essence to become them. He thought for a moment. It's similar to transfiguration. Once I used a similar method to dress a Christmas cactus with a layer of skin and turned it into something like Devil's Snare. Then Polyjuice can show the link between body and soul, Slytherin said. And there's Amortentia, where the drinker develops intense attraction and even smells their favorite scent. That shows the soul's feelings, provoking physical responses. Many dark arts injuries that resist magical and potion cures also point to the same idea. Slytherin leaned forward, his gaze sharp. Polyjuice, Amortentia, transfiguration. Being able to cite those means you understand the basics. We don't need to waste any more time. Let's move on. Good. Vizette nodded and pulled out his notebook, scribbling down everything. He planned to combine this new guidance with his own thoughts to see where he still had holes. Slytherin didn't rush him. He settled back on the basilisk and waited in silence. Vizette noticed and hurried his notes. Sorry for the delay, he said when he finished. You write quickly, Slytherin observed. You must do this often. Now then, Vizette, what do you think sustains the body and soul? After a moment, Vizette answered with confidence. Blood. He paused, then added, blood that contains magic. Slytherin's smile showed approval. To understand that blood carries magic, your grasp of potions is further along than I expected. Professor Snape began teaching me about this year, Vizette explained. He guided me to look at potions from their origins. Professor Snape? Slytherin raised an eyebrow. Is he a Ravenclaw too? Vizette shook his head. No, he's Slytherin, the youngest potions master. His understanding is very deep. Slytherin nodded. Not bad. At least one of you is Slytherin. Vizette continued. Actually, magical blood isn't as rare as it used to be. Thanks to Newt Scamander's work, the wizarding world now has specialized breeding areas. Blood containing magic is much easier to obtain. We don't have to go back to the Middle Ages, killing and refining creatures to harvest magical blood, he added. It's far more convenient now. Slytherin mused. That convenience has its downsides. Fewer wizards probably know or remember that blood contains magic. In older Hogwarts textbooks, they explicitly taught the blood drawing charm to ensure the blood used in brewing retained its magic, Vizette said. With Slytherin's guidance, Vizette's understanding crystallized. The magic in blood comes from the soul. It acts as an anchor that reinforces the body. When the soul is damaged, the anchor is lost and physical deficiencies follow, Moody's missing eye being a clear example. Slytherin cleared his throat. Now that we've settled what blood is, we move to the third step, truly learning bloodline magic. Vizette, already with a page full of notes, waited eagerly. Blood is not only the link between soul and body, Slytherin said slowly, it's the bridge. Because soul and body influence each other, we can use blood as that bridge to mobilize the magic within it and activate those anchors. He paused, eyes fixed on Vizette. Further, we can alter that blood bridge and draw in external forces to reinforce it, making a wizard more powerful. That is bloodline magic. Mobilize external forces? Vizette's voice brightened as he remembered something from the restricted section. You mean, combining with magical creatures? Slytherin gave a small, surprised nod. That is the most effective method, and there are many different ways to combine. There are many ways of combining, and the simplest and least technical is to continue a bloodline by instinct, letting descendants inherit unusual talents. The classic example was the union of a wizard and a Vila. Vila were magical creatures from Bulgaria, astonishingly beautiful and born with a charm magic of their own. Their skin seemed to glow with a soft, unearthly light, and their long hair moved as if caressed by a breeze that wasn't there. Children born of a wizard and a Vila would often keep the Vila's looks and gifts, including a capacity for magic. But it was not without flaws. The Vila's power was bound up in their hair. If their long hair was damaged, they lost their magic and their beauty, and their form could shift into a terrifying bird-like creature. The same vulnerability passed to the offspring. If their hair were harmed, their ability to cast spells would falter and their bodies grow frail. The Vila charm also brought trouble. Those with Vila blood were easy targets for rumors and slander. The Vila bloodline doesn't last long, Slytherin said. Usually it fades after only 3 generations. And the children of a Vila and a wizard are generally considered human, not recognized as Vila by Vila communities. Why? Vizette asked, his pen never pausing over his notes. I thought Vila didn't have males. How have they persisted? By combining with Muggles, Slytherin replied slowly. Are there not similar tales among muggles? A banshee appears in the wild, a man is beguiled, and when he wakes, he remembers only fragments. Vizette still looked puzzled. But why does a true Vila form only after combining with a muggle? Now is not the time for every question. Slytherin waved a hand and smiled enigmatically. The straightforward union of a wizard and a magical creature exacts the creature's weaknesses. It is the most basic form of bloodline magic. A more advanced approach used potions and ritual magic to pluck a creature's talent, he continued. Using potions and rituals as a medium, a wizard's blood could be made to contain a magical creature's gifts. That is audacious and brilliant, Vizette breathed. There is a very fine line between genius and madness. Which is why I told you before, follow your convictions, Vizette. Slytherin rose. This method is remarkable. Not only can talent be passed down, he went on, but descendants born from unions with other wizards have a high chance of inheriting the same talent. Vizette frowned, thinking of a conversation in the hospital wing with Dumbledore last year. Dean Slytherin, may I put it this way? When you talk about talent passing down through this method, do you mean what we call a soul talent? You're quick to catch on, Slytherin said, nodding. Soul, blood, body, much like alchemy. Noticing Slytherin's look, Vizette thought a moment and said, transformation and regeneration. Bloodline magic, though it resides in the blood, can be changed using blood as a medium. The key is a wizard marrying a wizard. That is how bloodline magic can be transformed into soul talent. If that's true, then the so-called pure blood theory, Slytherin's lips curved into a sneer. Wizards marrying within themselves, preserving bloodline magic, and transforming it into permanent soul talents. That's the foundation of wizards becoming more powerful. From that grows the idea that other magical creatures should be our vassals. So you were criticizing the name itself, Vizette said, the realization dawning. You thought the label was ridiculous. Exactly. Slytherin's eyes were cold. Call it whatever you like. The point is the logic behind it. Dean Slytherin, another question, Vizette murmured. If bloodline magic can be turned into soul talent, why hasn't it been widely promoted? If that were the case, the pureblood families wouldn't have needed to invent a pure blood theory. They'd at least have given it a different name to sell the idea. And besides, Slytherin added, this method is not perfectly safe. The chance of failure is greater than many imagine. He fixed Vizette with a steady gaze. A wizard's soul usually manifests only one or a few soul talents. Exceptional cases are rare. Moreover, he said, that clever method can produce undesirable consequences. Anomalies can arise, vampires, for instance. At the mention of vampires, Vizette pictured the familiar traits, pallid, skeletal faces and fangs that could not be hidden, used to pierce throats and drink blood. What about werewolves? He asked. Are they anomalies born from bloodline magic too? Certainly, Slytherin nodded. Even if vampires are kept in check, similar anomalies can occasionally reappear as a side effect of bloodline experiments. Vizette exhaled, then offered another thought. To reduce the side effects of bloodline magic, you need interaction with muggles. Wizards can never be entirely separated from muggles. You can think of it that way, Slytherin said, surprised. What gave me the idea, Vizette explained, was what you said about Vila producing true Vila only after combining with a muggle. He remembered lessons on wand-making and an old rumor. There's an old story that humanity split into two groups early on, those naturally attuned to magic, who became wizards, and those who didn't, muggles. So when wizards, by bloodline manipulation, diverge too far from humanity, they need muggles to keep them anchored to the human side. Even today, wizards are urged to keep their world separate from muggles, but interaction isn't forbidden. If it were, the idea of muggle-borns wouldn't exist. 334. Further blood magic. Slytherin pursed his lips as if seeing Vizette anew. Vizette, noticing the odd look, asked, Dean Slytherin, am I far off? No, Slytherin cut in. That you could even think along these lines surprises me. No wonder you're a Ravenclaw. Vizette made a neat note in his notebook, underlining the word muggle and tagging it for future research. Slytherin rose. The bloodline magic I'm about to teach you is the result of my own research. The basilisk, sensing something, flicked its tongue and shivered. Vizette thought of the cramped stone chamber of the Chamber of Secrets. Dean Slytherin, are your results the things kept in the chamber, the ashes? Exactly. Those ashes. Slytherin stroked the basilisk's head and told it to rest. There are parallels between curses and bloodline magic. Fortunately, Vizette already had a solid grounding in potions and ritual magic, so he could follow Slytherin's pace and begin properly learning bloodline magic. As Slytherin had hinted, curses and bloodline magic shared certain similarities. Both could draw power from magical creatures through ritual work. Both had serious limitations. Curses demanded strict adherence to their contracts. Fail, and you risked your life. Bloodline magic carried the danger of mutation and other unpredictable side effects. If curses and classic bloodline magic were two ends of a spectrum, Slytherin's research sat somewhere in the middle. It largely avoided their worst costs while maximizing the benefits. Slytherin settled back on the basilisk. Questions time. What did you take away from this? Vizette looked at him and realized Slytherin had changed. His skin had taken on a granite hue, as if he could become stone at any moment. Hesitantly, he asked, "Dean Slytherin, are you going to turn back into a statue?" Slytherin nodded. "This is how I temporarily avoid death. It's an application of a curse I developed," he explained plainly. "The Petrificus Totalis gives me the capacity to become statue-like, and a death curse lets me postpone dying. The cost is that I only have limited active hours each day." For a moment, Vizette thought of the veil and the skeletal figure he'd glimpsed the first time he used the Patronus and first learned about souls. "Avoiding death? Is there something beyond death?" he asked. Slytherin smiled slowly. "Is that what you think?" Vizette answered without hesitation. "I don't think you're afraid of death." "We're not afraid of death. We simply don't want to be bound by it, at least for now." Slytherin's voice became urgent. "Let's begin. Time's almost up." "It still feels conceptual," Vizette said, "since brewing bloodline potions needs a lot of preparation." "In my view, this sort of bloodline potion is much like polyjuice," Slytherin replied. "Polyjuice mimics a person's appearance. A bloodline potion mimics the aptitudes of a magical creature." "You said your inspiration came from polyjuice," Vizette remarked, flipping through his notes. "I think the most innovative part of your work is building bridges." "Bridges?" Slytherin prompted. "Yes, bridges derived from creatures' talents that can be called upon quickly. They cut down on casting and incantations while producing special effects. If you could fully acquire a house elf's talent through bloodline magic, for example, you'd be able to move freely around Hogwarts." Slytherin's eyes gleamed. "You've summarized it well, and your examples are astute. Vizette, your knowledge has given you a solid foundation. In this lesson, you did exceptionally. We should end for today. As for the next class, it may be a long time. It's December now. We'll see each other next year." He patted the basilisk and hissed a question in Parseltongue. Before he finished, the basilisk answered by choice. "I want to stay here." Slytherin agreed. He and the basilisk returned to the statue's pedestal. The dean shifted back into stone. With the basilisk coiled within, the statue looked even more imposing, a spiraling mountain of stone with Salazar Slytherin at its summit. Vizette closed his notebook and bowed deeply. The lesson had opened a door to bloodline magic and given Vizette a new way to understand curses by analogy. Curses, he realized, were not unlike ancient magics, narrower than ancient magic, but especially potent in certain aspects. He could, in theory, develop a gaze like the basilisk's. Wherever he looked, victims would be affected by a Petrificus Totalis-like petrification, turning them to statues like Madame Norris. His current mastery wasn't sufficient. Casting such a gaze would injure his eyes. But he trusted that deeper study of bloodline magic would reveal ways to remove that damage. This was only his first contact with curses. He expected to find more applications as he learned. More than offensive power, Vizette valued magic for its capacity to change life. He climbed the final step of the astronomy tower and saw a figure he would never forget. Luna had been there a while. Her sketchbook lay open with distant scenery captured in delicate strokes. She must have sensed him. She set down her brush and turned. Their eyes met. A breeze lifted her long, pale gold hair into a shimmering halo. "Even more dazzling than the sunset," Vizette said, quickening his pace to her side. "I'm back." Luna looked him over and smiled with gentle approval. "It seems everything went smoothly." Vizette returned her smile. "I did make a promise." 335. Lockhart being attacked? Why is the door open? Could Lockhart have been attacked? Quiet, and don't be so excited. Ron, Hermione, look, it really is Lockhart. I knew it, he really was attacked. Ron, yes, this is serious, we shouldn't be celebrating. Hermione, Ron, look, did his eyelids just twitch? Lockhart heard 3 student voices through a fog of pain. They came and went like echoes. Their words slid past him without fully registering. As his mind cleared, the pain became unbearable. His skull felt as if hammered, his body convulsed as if crushed by a giant boulder. Questions crowded his head. Why am I like this? Who attacked me? Oh, right. I was about to use the memory charm on Snape, and he struck first. Hermione, what should we do? Take him to the hospital wing. Harry's voice drew closer. Lockhart forced his eyes open. The late sun cast a weak glow across the office. He finally made out 3 students standing before him. Harry impressed him most. The brown-haired girl had to be Hermione. She'd come to him once for an autograph to better read Voyages with Ghouls. Hermione waved. Professor Lockhart? Professor Lockhart? Lockhart tried to push himself up. His hands felt pierced by needles. Even the slightest movement cut through him. Hermione rushed on. Professor Lockhart, are you all right? Ron, lend a hand. Harry stepped forward and took Lockhart's arm. Ron nodded and joined them. Together they helped Lockhart to his feet. He gasped and hissed, face contorted, veins standing out, a sheen of cold sweat across his brow. They eased him into a chair. Lockhart forced a strained smile. I'm fine. I was attacked by a monster, a very large one. Where's my wand? He fumbled in his pockets and came up empty. I wounded that monster from the Chamber of Secrets. There should be blood on it. So you stabbed the monster with your wand, Ron said, puzzled. Wouldn't it break? How would it leave bloodstains? Harry couldn't help a small laugh. He stooped and picked up a wand lying on the floor. Professor, this looks like yours. Oh, thank you. Lockhart accepted it, waving it weakly. He studied the 3 of them. Why are you here? Hermione answered quickly. We were in the library studying and just came back. The library! What a splendid place! Lockhart beamed, scrutinizing their expressions. You can learn so much there. It shouldn't be dull, right? Harry and Ron exchanged looks. Harry managed a stiff nod. It's not bad. We learned a lot, Hermione chimed, nodding eagerly. You must have loved it too, Professor. No wonder you used so much magic on your adventures. Lockhart glanced at Harry and Ron. It seems the library's a touch dry for you two. Then he turned back to Hermione. You find it fascinating, dry and fascinating. Now I understand. It was as Vizette had guessed. Lockhart's trick was to use emotion as a door and then cast the memory charm. He had always been certain that, at least where memory charms were concerned, even Dumbledore couldn't match him. A memory charm cast that way could effectively erase memories without a trace and make them difficult to restore, unless the counterspell caster also knew to use emotion as a key and counter the charm the same way. Even then, he wasn't too worried. The memories he took ended up stored in his own mind. Harry and the others looked at one another, uncertain what Lockhart was talking about. Hermione frowned. Professor Lockhart, are you still feeling unwell? Should we take you to the hospital wing? Of course not. Lockhart waved his wand again, beginning an incantation. Oh! Thump! Thump! Professor Lockhart? Professor McGonagall's voice came from the doorway. May I interrupt? Lockhart's hands stiffened around the wand. Professor McGonagall, is something the matter? Please come in. She entered, took in the disarray on the office floor, and looked at the 3 students. Miss Granger, Mr. Potter, Mr. Weasley, why are you here? Professor McGonagall, we saw Professor Lockhart faint, Hermione said quickly. It looks like he might have been attacked by a monster. Yes, Harry and Ron nodded. We were in the library reading before. McGonagall's expression softened with approval. Very good. It's late now. Go and have dinner. Outside the office, Ron shook his head in disbelief. Professor McGonagall was like my grandmother just now. How should I put it? Ron scratched his head. It was kindly. Yes, kind. Have you ever seen her like that? Harry shrugged. No, I don't think so. See, studying's always the right choice, Hermione said, head held high. She was so pleased when we said we'd been in the library. It wasn't so bad, Harry admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. I worked out the pronunciation for the reviving charm. If Lockhart hadn't woken up, I was going to try it. Ron brightened. I read that book, From Silver Needle to Blade. Watch this. He dug Scabbers the rat out of his pocket, aimed his wand, and muttered, Vera Verto. Scabbers trembled as shimmering silver began to creep over him. More than half his body transformed into a delicate silver cup, his tail still flicking frantically as the little creature panicked. Ron frowned and scratched his head. That's not quite right. I tried it on a bug in the library, and it worked. Must have been an accident. Hermione sighed, then smiled. It's still very good. Changing a rat isn't easy. Well done, Ron. Keep practicing. Think about when we first met, Harry said to comfort him. You tried to transfigure Scabbers, and nothing happened at all. This time at least half of it worked. Ron nodded, then brightened. If only Professor McGonagall had been willing to give us points just now. Ahem! McGonagall cleared her throat, adopting a stern tone. Reading in the library, very studious. Gryffindor gets 10 points. Hermione pressed them on. If you keep this up, Professor McGonagall will definitely reward you in Transfiguration. Harry turned to Hermione, lips pursed, as if reassessing her. She frowned. What's wrong? You're different, Harry said. The way you speak, how you lead us to break school rules, take us to the lavatory to brew a potion. It's not what you were like last year, around the time of when that Cerberus trouble started. You were completely different then. He looked at Ron. Don't you think so? Hermione arched an eyebrow. Is that not allowed? Do you want me to go back to how I was? Of course not, Harry and Ron both said quickly. Ron beamed. No, it's brilliant. Exactly how Gryffindor should be. Meanwhile, in his office, Lockhart was in a fluster. He shoved the bottle of amortentia into a drawer, scooped up scattered letters, and crammed them into a cabinet. When Professor McGonagall came in, Lockhart smoothed his robes and tried to look composed. Professor Lockhart, she began, producing a roll of parchment. I have good news. The application for the dueling club has been approved. We'll run it on Thursday evening, as you suggested. Already? Lockhart's eyes widened. He didn't quite reach for the parchment McGonagall offered. Yes, very good idea. McGonagall set the paper on his desk. Headmaster Dumbledore thinks it's important for students to learn how to duel. Lockhart forced a laugh. After all, I am the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. Adventure and dueling are my specialty. No one understands dueling better than I do. He began to unroll the parchment, but as he scanned it, his face drained of color. His hand trembled as he read the name of the assistant aloud. Severus? Snape? McGonagall nodded. Yes, he is a young professor, and I thought you two, being closer in age, might get along. You told the students in the Great Hall how well you relate to young people, Lockhart said weakly, smiling that brittle smile of his. You even said you could get closer to Professor Snape. His smile cracked. Yes, young professor, easier to get along with. If the earlier incident hadn't happened today, he might have tried to ingratiate himself with Snape. Even if Snape refused to cooperate, as a potion master, he should be no more than an impressive assistant. Certainly not someone who could expose him. But he'd seen Snape today. He'd seen everything. The dueling club would give them a regular opportunity to meet. Lockhart's mind raced. When McGonagall left, Lockhart slammed the door so hard it nearly burst the hinges. The gust chilled him. His chest felt icy. His composure had been stripped bare. Oh no, everything's exposed. That was what he kept thinking. There were still a few days before Thursday, he told himself. He could run, disappear into the Muggle world. He knew how Muggles lived, after all. He stuffed his wand into his pocket, glanced at the self-portraits and the ornaments that filled the room, then began to pack. Clothes, self-portraits, his published books. Sweat soaked through his robes, even his carefully arranged hair drooped. Then something caught his eye. A plain black notebook on the desk. T.M. Riddle, the cover read. He had no idea how it had come to be there. He felt an odd calm at the sight of it, a sudden urge to sit and write that pushed back the impulse to flee. Lockhart wiped his brow, sat down, and hunted for ink and a quill. When he dipped the quill, a drop of ink fell on the page and vanished as if it had been swallowed by the paper. He frowned and peered closer. It didn't feel like a dark artifact, but he couldn't place it. He replaced the notebook on the desk, and then words appeared on the page. Could you tell me your name, esteemed sir, or madam? Lockhart blinked. He put the quill to the paper and began a sentence out of habit. I am Gild. His hand hesitated, then scrawled, I am Gilderoy Snape. Mr. Snape, it's a pleasure to meet you, the book replied. Through your handwriting, I can sense hesitation and anxiety. Has something happened? Would you tell me? Perhaps I can help. Lockhart's mouth opened. He looked at the quill in his hand, and then asked aloud, Who are you? My name is Tom Riddle, the notebook answered. A witness and recorder. I have written down Hogwarts' terrible past and the hidden truths. Lockhart tightened his grip on the quill. Hogwarts' terrible past? Hidden truths? What have you recorded? Mr. Snape, do you know that the Chamber of Secrets was opened 50 years ago? And only I know exactly what happened back then, the notebook said. 337. Lockhart, the adventurer? Lockhart, the trickster? The Chamber of Secrets was opened 50 years ago? Lockhart gripped his quill so tightly his knuckles paled. A nearly forgotten curiosity, an itch for real knowledge, flared up inside him. He glanced nervously at the door, certain, for reasons he couldn't name, that it was trembling. He forced himself to write a single line in the notebook. What is the monster inside? What the monster is doesn't matter, because it may have already been eliminated. If I'm not mistaken, Dumbledore will find another scapegoat, just like he did back then. What did you say? Lockhart's eyes widened. Dumbledore found a scapegoat? That's right. Pansy Parkinson was that scapegoat. Lockhart remembered. Snape mentioned Pansy Parkinson back then. New handwriting appeared. I hope Dumbledore and the others haven't come looking for you. Otherwise, you might end up like me, unable to protect yourself, waiting for later generations to uncover the truth. Conspiracy theories crowded Lockhart's mind. He wrote, What do you mean? What exactly did Dumbledore do? Mr. Snape, you can also go to the trophy room on the 4th floor. There's a special contribution award medal there that belongs to me. This is the result of my choosing to comply. Back then I was an ignorant child, misled by Dumbledore, and I made a choice I regret for the rest of my life. I identified Rubus Hagrid. The honor I received tormented me, as if I had fallen into a whirlpool from which I could never escape. Yet I was afraid. I worried someone would see through it all and know I was Dumbledore's accomplice. I feel ashamed toward the victim from back then, so I decided to give my life to show remorse to her. But before that, I left this notebook to expose Dumbledore's wickedness. Lockhart sighed. Trapped in a whirlpool of honor. Reading the words as they formed, he recognized that familiar torment. His reputation at Hogwarts had dwindled, the sensation of being pulled under only intensifying. He shivered, set the quill down, and tried to steady himself. No, I can't get myself into any more trouble. It's more important to leave quickly. He reached to close the notebook, stuff it into his suitcase, and go, when more writing appeared. Gilderoy Snape, sir? I remember Pansy Parkinson told me they had a professor named Gilderoy Lockhart. This professor is quite extraordinary. He's written so many books, yet he never demonstrates real magic during his classes. Lockhart's hair prickled. A cold fear ran down his spine. He snatched the notebook and tried to tear it in half, then stabbed at it with a letter opener, splashed ink over the pages. Nothing harmed the book. The handwriting continued, calm and clinical. Mr. Lockhart, those books must have brought you a great deal of income. Do you really think you can escape unharmed? Perhaps the adventurer Lockhart in the books could do that. But is a fraudster Lockhart, who is almost a squib, being a bit too presumptuous? Panic clawed at him. He scrawled back, What exactly do you want to do? I am not your enemy, Professor Lockhart. I can help Pansy Parkinson, make her the heir of the Chamber of Secrets, and that can help you, turn you into a normal wizard. Really? The word came out small. Drip a drop of blood on the notebook, and we can communicate better. Lockhart stared, lips trembling, his eyes flicking between the letter opener and the notebook. Sweat ran cold down his temple. After a long, shuddering moment, he wiped his hand, took the letter opener, and jabbed his finger. A bead of blood welled, fell, and landed on the page. The world tilted. He felt as if he were slipping through paper, falling amid a riot of colors and shadow. At the center of the whirl of light, a figure began to take shape. When he could focus, Lockhart saw a handsome young man in a Hogwarts uniform, black hair, black eyes, composed and cold. Mr. Lockhart, so this is why you can't cast spells? The young man said, snapping his fingers. A mirror materialized before Lockhart. Lockhart recoiled and screamed, Who is that? What have you done to me? I want to leave. The mirror reflected a humanoid like stained glass, every inch of its skin patched together, grotesquely pieced. What horrified Lockhart most was the wide, fresh-looking gash along its torso. The edges twitched and writhed as if trying to knit themselves back together. So that's how it is. The young man snapped his fingers again, and the mirror vanished. Mr. Lockhart, you should calm down and listen. Shoving other people's memories into your own, but being unable to integrate those memories, causes your suppressed magical talent to degenerate further, turning you into a stitched monster. Lockhart could barely look at that image. He swallowed and stammered. How do you know? The young man smiled with an unsettling ease. What? Are you willing to talk now? Want to go further? For example, erase those who know your secret? After lunch, Vizette and Luna stepped out of the castle gate. Vizette appeared to be carrying a pot of mandrake, though in truth, he had a wandless, non-verbal floating charm keeping the pot suspended beside him, so it required little effort. Luna walked ahead, her wand flicking like a delighted butterfly, pushing snow aside to clear a path. The long stretch of rain had finally broken, and snow had come in its place, scattering flakes until Hogwarts wore a thick, white cloak. The sun fought the remaining cloud cover for a while, then burst through, pouring brilliant light from the ragged edges of the sky. Sunlight struck the piled snow along the road and reflected like two golden mountain ranges rising from the earth. Luna would occasionally lift her wand and pluck a vividly colored leaf from the glittering banks. If those leaves were hidden treasures, Luna behaved like a niffler with discerning taste, always able to spot a glittering thing at the first opportunity and slip it into her pockets. 338, a different kind of mandrake. The walk from the castle to the greenhouse wasn't short, but Vizette felt the time fly. It seemed like no time at all before Luna, who was leading the way, turned around, cheeks flushed. It felt like only a moment, and we're already here. With the Christmas holidays approaching, the weather was getting colder. The mandrakes were growing larger and more restless. Besides pushing up through the soil for air, they were starting to try to climb out of their pots. Professor Sprout stood by the benches with pink earmuffs around her neck and a shovel in her hand. If mandrakes get cold, their roots can rot, she warned. All our work will be for nothing. So cold protection is important, she continued. We need to put socks and scarves on them. Don't let these little ones catch a cold. First, tap the shovel 3 times on the edge of the pot. Yes, like knocking on a door. They've grown up now. Once they extend their roots, you can start shoveling away the soil. 2 baskets lay on the bench, filled with brightly colored scarves and socks. They're very particular about color, Professor Sprout added. You'll need to watch their reactions. That was why Vizette had brought their mandrake to the greenhouse. Besides him and Luna, Neville, Hannah, Cedric, and about 10 other students were gathered in a semicircle around Professor Sprout. Dressing mandrakes was delicate work, not suitable for a full class, so only a small group had been invited for a hands-on lesson. As Professor Sprout handed out earmuffs, Luna leaned close and whispered, "Our mandrake seems especially well-behaved. It's usually so docile, almost like a mooncalf." "It is similar," Vizette agreed. "It only gets fidgety and hops around when I bring the special fertilizer." Once everyone had theirs on, Professor Sprout picked up a pot and tapped the shovel 3 times against the rim. The mandrake reacted instantly. On the 3rd tap, it thrust out its roots and started scrabbling at the soil. She tilted the pot so everyone could see and began to shovel away the surface earth. The mandrake tried to scramble free, clutching the edge of the pot, but Professor Sprout gently held it, pulled out a pair of socks and a scarf from the basket, and dangled them in front of it. The mandrake nudged the orange scarf, then waved its roots at a pink and a blue sock. Sprout shook the scarf and switched the socks to orange, then the mandrake accepted them, and she slipped the items on. After the demonstration, she had everyone take off their earmuffs. "See? They show aggression to things they dislike. The intensity of the waving varies. You'll need to experience that yourselves." She went over a few more tips, then had everyone put their earmuffs back on and divide into pairs to start the dressing. Luna had been right. The mandrake they'd brought was unusually well behaved. When Luna slipped the socks on, it cooperated. shaking its head politely even when presented with different colors. It was also noticeably larger than most. If it weren't for the little telltale features and Professor Sprout's confirmation, Vizette might have thought it mature. Neville and Hannah dug up their pot next, but their mandrake was less cooperative. It disliked several colors and kept flailing its roots. As if annoyed, the mandrake by Vizette suddenly opened its mouth wide. Neville's did the same. Luna cocked her head, picked up the colorful mandrake, and brought it to the baskets. That mandrake waved its roots, picked out a gray scarf and socks, and tossed them to Neville. Neville's mandrake lurched forward twice as if to accept them. Hannah grabbed the set quickly and helped it dress. Vizette and Luna took turns holding their mandrake, wandering between benches. Perhaps emboldened by being larger than its neighbors, it grew bolder, stretching its sock-clad roots to tap other mandrake's pots. Its lively antics kept Luna laughing. Her rosy cheeks made her look very pretty. Although the two of them didn't keep dressing others, their brightness actually improved the group's efficiency. In less than an hour, nearly 1/7 of the mandrakes were dressed for winter. As a thank you, Professor Sprout handed out packets of biscuits. They smelled of fresh, magic-tinged herbs even through the oiled paper. The biscuits were crisper than those served in the Great Hall and left a warming, pleasant glow throughout the body. The bottom of the packet even contained the recipe with detailed steps and measurements. Try making them at home, Professor Sprout suggested. Your families will be surprised. When most of the students had left the greenhouse, Vizette stayed behind with his mandrake. Professor Sprout, he said, I think my mandrake is a little different. I thought so too, she said, nodding. Bigger than the others and more active. You're probably heading home for Christmas, she added. If you like, leave it here so I can watch it over the holidays. Maybe I can figure out why. Vizette agreed. I'll bring the fertilizer over. It needs a special kind. That might be it, Professor Sprout said. A very picky little fellow. Vizette nodded. This one really was unusual, demanding special fertilizer and, once, protesting so badly that it had sent Lockhart to the hospital wing. Later, beneath the eagle statue in one of the castle's corridors, the bronze ring in its base trembled and a pleasant female voice echoed from it. I never walk, yet I can go from London to Rome. I have no wings, yet I can soar through the blue sky. I close my eyes, yet I can see all sorts of strange and wonderful things. Vizette and Luna answered at the same time. Imagination! The bronze door slowly opened, revealing students gathered around the bulletin board, studying a newly posted notice. Anthony saw Vizette and Luna walking by, waved, and called out, Tonight at 8, the Great Hall is holding a gathering called the Duel Club. 339, Upcoming Duel Club. If any student had overslept through lunch and missed the announcement about the Duel Club, they learned the moment they entered the classroom. Tonight in the Great Hall, a professor would give a personal demonstration of dueling techniques. Anthony Goldstein was probably the most excited of all. While they waited for class to start, he waved his hands as he talked. Dueling's not just talk. They'll let us practice actual combat tonight. They should have done this ages ago, someone said. All the magic we've learned so far has just been theory for betting on success or failure. That's a line from Wandering with Werewolves, Terry Boot said, looking up from his notes. Who do you think will be demonstrating? Anthony cupped his chin in a mock thinker's pose. Maybe Professor Flitwick? I heard from my family he competed in dueling tournaments when he was young, and even won a championship, someone added. A dueling champion. Michael set his quill down and pushed his notebook aside. Professor Flitwick is actually that impressive? I didn't expect that. Which competition was it? Chris Moon demanded. Given Anthony's family background, anything he said carried weight. When Anthony said he'd heard something, people usually believed it. He scratched his head. Let me think. What was it called? It was a tournament that seemed open to every wizard in England. The All-England Wizard Dueling Championship, Vizette asked. I think it's held every 2 years. Yes, Anthony said with sudden excitement. There were no age restrictions, the safety measures are solid, and anyone could sign up. And the winner gets the egg of some magical creature, Chris said, eyes wide. All England Wizard Dueling Championship, huh? Chris sighed. Even if it's open to everyone, it doesn't include us. Let's just look forward to tonight's duel club. Michael pushed his notebook toward Vizette. Oh, Vizette, which of these should I practice? Vizette scanned the page. The dancing feet spell, the leg locker curse, and the tickling charm. Are you planning to use them at the duel club, or just later? Tonight, Michael said. There'll be tons of students. I can't fall behind. Heh heh, I know what you're thinking, Anthony teased. Close your mouth next time. You're practically drooling. Don't you want to show off? Michael covered his mouth and raised his eyebrows. Even if I don't show off, I can't lose to whoever I duel, right? Use the dancing feet spell and the leg locker curse together, Vizette advised. Combining them produces a surprising effect. Having grown up around Aurors, Vizette knew his combat magic. First use the dancing feet spell to distract the opponent, then the leg locker curse to bind them. Right, Vizette nodded. In a formal duel, once the opponent can't resist, you can claim victory. There's a similar tactic in Travels with Trolls, someone said. They use those two spells to temporarily incapacitate a troll. If it's not a formal duel, add a few more spells, or take the opponent's wand, Anthony warned. Don't leave them any way to resist. Terry opened his notebook and quickly wrote down the two spells to practice later. Chris did the same, repeating the names under his breath. Are two spells enough? Michael asked. Do I need a protective charm too? What about shield charms from Lockhart's books? Vizette, what do you think of those? Vizette shook his head. I don't recommend the shield charm lightly. The incantation isn't that complicated, but mastering it is hard. Why? Michael rubbed his head. It seems to appear everywhere in the books. To cast a reliable shield charm, you need inner resolve, Vizette said, searching for the right image. If your finger is the opponent's magic, then your shield charm is like your eye. He held his finger close to his face and didn't blink, unblinking. If your resolve wavers, the shield charm becomes unstable, worse than just dodging. Casting it is as much about overcoming fear as about the words. That's what my great-aunt told me, Anthony agreed. Knowing the spell isn't the same as using it in real combat. What time does it start? 8, Michael asked. How long will it last? 10 at the latest? We still have astronomy tonight. They didn't say astronomy would be canceled. So that's it, Michael nodded. I'll just practice the dancing feet spell and the leg locker curse. After afternoon classes, talk of the duel club only grew. Neville sat with another group, anxiously flipping through a notebook and muttering to himself. As long as there's no physical contact, then it counts as a duel. Fred leaned over to read Neville's notes. Want me to lend you a couple of fireworks so you can just toss them over? Fireworks? Neville looked confused. Can I do that? Of course not. George slapped Neville's shoulder. But if you meet someone from Slytherin, light them and blow them up together. Boom. People will remember you forever. Or treat your opponent like a mandrake, Luna suggested. Just help him put on his scarf and socks. Hannah blinked. Mandrake? That doesn't sound so scary. Vizette chimed in. Pay attention to using Petrificus Totalis. Haven't you all been practicing it recently? Like Luna said, treat them like mandrakes, someone repeated. Make them put on scarf and socks, then Petrificus Totalis. Brilliant. George whistled. You really know how to explain it. Then let's imagine we're fireworks. Fred closed his eyes dramatically. And blow up together. 340. Agent Vizette. After dinner, many students lingered in the Great Hall, planning to wait until 8 o'clock. Professor Flitwick raised his wand and, with a few deft motions, slid the 4 long house tables together and shifted them to the exact center of the hall. Professor McGonagall stood before the now united tables, murmuring as she conducted subtle transfigurations until they had become a raised, ornate stage. While she adjusted gilded details along the edges, Flitwick pointed his wand up at the enchanted ceiling. Flitwick's wand flicked gently, and the brilliant painted stars dimmed until the ceiling was a velvet black. Thousands of candles floated into the air, their flames reflected against the darkness. The candlelight trembled like the students' own mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. As more people gathered, the hall grew noisy with chatter. They're coming! They're coming! Someone shouted, and every head turned toward the main entrance. It's Snape, another voice corrected. And Lockhart. I thought Dumbledore would come himself, someone else muttered. Severus Snape entered first, as stern and black-robed as ever. his eyes hooded to hide the coldness beneath. Gilderoy Lockhart followed in a flashy crimson robe, his signature smile plastered on. He waved to the crowd and stepped up onto the stage with a practiced flourish, then tripped on a step and nearly fell. Snape glanced at him with a thin, contemptuous smirk. Lockhart recovered instantly, chuckling as if the stumble were part of the act, and launched into a flamboyant explanation of his good intentions for the evening. He slipped in asides about his books and his adventuring exploits, painting himself as the ideal teacher for dueling instruction. Snape's patience thinned. Lockhart's smile stiffened when Snape shifted his wand into a sharper posture, and the boasting froze into an awkward cough. "Allow me to introduce my assistant," Lockhart stammered. Snape's hand moved as if to accept the role. Lockhart hurried on. "As you all know, Professor Snape is a master of potions, very different from me," he said, making a show of being humble. "Given my extensive experience in the field, I'd rather not have him injured during the demonstration, because of my lack of proper caution." Snape's eyes narrowed. Lockhart took a small step back and cleared his throat. "Since this is about teaching students to duel, we should have a volunteer demonstrate," Lockhart said brightly. "Professor Snape, do you agree?" "Indeed," Snape replied, his gaze hard. "Since you insist on a volunteer, I will choose one." Lockhart, relieved, clapped. The idea of Snape picking someone was preferable to him. After less than a week of private practice, even with a notebook, he knew he couldn't match Snape. A student would be a safer, more controllable demonstration partner. "Mr. Vizette Lovegood," Snape's voice cut through the murmurs as he scanned the crowd. Vizette Lovegood moved forward and climbed onto the stage, standing beside Snape. Lockhart brightened. "A very good choice," he said, putting on his most theatrical tone. "Tonight we will teach a simple but essential spell, Expelliarmus." "Disarm your opponent's wand, and you win swiftly," Lockhart gushed. "Do you know Expelliarmus?" Snape coughed softly, so low only Vizette could hear him. Vizette shook his head. "Professor Lockhart, I've only read about this spell. I haven't actually used it." Lockhart's expression pinched. He'd heard the "only read about it" defense before. "Then allow me to instruct you briefly. The incantation is simple. Expelliarmus. Then you thrust your wand." "You thrust your wand," Snape interjected, voice cold. "Mr. Lovegood, what is the proper wand movement for Expelliarmus?" Vizette answered carefully. "According to the book, for beginners it's best to give a short flick, as if you're knocking an object away with your hand." "Aha," Lockhart said, sweating slightly as he tried to cover his earlier mistake. "Of course, I must have been thinking of another spell. After all, I do know so many. Since Mr. Lovegood knows the theoretical motion, let's proceed with the demonstration. Show the students exactly how a duel is carried out," Snape said. "All right." Vizette tightened his grip on his wand. "First, hold the wand level with your chest, the tip pointing toward your opponent. Then bow," Lockhart added with a flourish, "and keep a certain distance. Duels are acted out by magic only, no physical contact." Snape interrupted. "Stand back a little farther. As a novice attempting Expelliarmus, it's easy to misdirect it." Harry's eyes widened. "Snape actually cares about Lockhart," he whispered. "I don't think it's care," Ron said, frowning. "Look at Snape's expression, like when he's watching us in potions. He's up to something." Lockhart waved away the concern. "Nonsense. As an adventurer, I am perfectly confident." "Be cautious, Mr. Lovegood," Snape said quietly. "Be restrained." Vizette managed a small, controlled nod. "I'll do my best." "Then let's begin." Lockhart flourished his wand as if it were a rapier. On the count of 3, 3, 2, 1. At the last number, Vizette flicked his wand hard and shouted, "Expelliarmus!" A jet of red light exploded from his wand. For an instant, the students nearest the stage saw the world bathed in crimson. The sound of a heavy impact echoed through the hall. When vision cleared, they watched Lockhart slammed against the far wall, sliding down slowly as if stunned. "Is Lockhart dead?" Ron blurted, disbelief in his voice. "Probably stunned," Harry said, voice shaky. Snape moved silently to where Lockhart had fallen, retrieved his wand from the ground, and then turned his attention to Vizette. "Mr. Lovegood, well done." Vizette felt his cheeks warm, with a mix of shock and pride. "Thank you, Professor Snape." Snape's voice was cool and final. "That will be all for tonight's demonstration. You may return to your dormitories." The students dispersed in a buzz of excited conversation, replaying the moment. Wizette stepped down from the stage with a lightness he hadn't expected. He had completed the task and, to his surprise, impressed Snape. It felt like the first real step of his time at Hogwarts, and he couldn't wait to see what came next.